Good morning again, everyone, and welcome back to the KSR YouTube channel. Today we are working on the Chevy 2. Well, I'm working on the Chevy 2. CJ's over there buried somewhere under the Viper. See his legs hanging out? Wave a foot, CJ. Wave a foot. There's CJ. So he's working on the back of the Viper while I am working on the grill, mounting and headlight mounting and radiator mounting on the Chevy 2. As it turns out, it's proven to be a little more difficult than I was expecting. Not so much because the fabrication work is hard. I mean, no big deal there. But everything on this car is aftermarket sheet metal. The aftermarket sheet metal doesn't match the originals. Yeah. And not only that, the hood doesn't match the original hood lines. So I've got to do a bunch of chopping, fitting, a bunch of stuff I'm not too thrilled about. So I'm having to take a couple of pretty big steps backwards in my planning. Like, I haven't really executed much yet as far as finalizing some of the fitment of things, but been doing some research, looking at stock fenders online. We're gonna get to work and do a lot of chopping and welding and cutting and splicing and see if I can bring this thing back around to fit like it's supposed to. All right, so I'm gonna jump into this thing, kind of bring you guys along for the ride and show you at least some of this stuff that you don't even really see when the car's done, but it makes a big difference to making the car turn out nicer in the end. Let's get started. All right, so like I said in the intro, we've encountered some things that are going to take us a little while to fix. They weren't immediately obvious, but I feel like I really need to fix them before I get the radiator mounted in the car. You guys know we're getting down to crunch time on getting this thing ready for LS Fest. And one way or the other, it's getting to LS Fest, even if I've got to go all night on it a couple nights, which I don't want to have to do. But one of the things I noticed is with these aftermarket fenders, when I'm looking at stock fenders, you can kind of see that this is going up at an angle a little bit. So every picture I can find of a stock fender, this is a lot more level. Well, for me to fix that, I can maybe make a cut in here and try to bend that down a little bit. If we hold the trim ring up, well, the hood's kind of in the way, but you can see the trim ring leaves a huge spot on the corner there where it doesn't really fit all that well. And if you kind of look at the second thing, you can see we've got, even if we raise the hood up, you can see something about here doesn't really line up all that good. So I went and made me a template because we've got a stock hood to look at. And you can see there's an edge across the front. So that is the difference in the stock hood and this fiberglass hood. Well, that's not a big deal. You just slice that off, right? Well, the problem with that is there's a corner right here. And if I slice that off, well, now this front edge of the hood is going to be a lot more bendy because it doesn't really have a lot of support tied to it. So we've got to do this on both sides. We've got to fix the fenders on both sides. And then once I get headlight buckets mounted, the headlights and the trim mounted, then I can mount the grill and then figure out where I'm going to put the radiator and all that fun stuff. So I'm going to jump into this thing. It's going to be some time lapses. I'll jump back in, show you progress in person, Thought you guys might want to see the process of trying to make this better. This is one of those things, like I said, you won't even know it's done when it's done. Won't even know there's hours wrapped up in fixing things like this. But if I don't fix it, at least the way I think, I feel like it's gonna, well, for one, look like crap, but also cause us other problems with fitment that by the time we get to trying to fit everything together, you're gonna have a grill pointing this way and a headlight and a fender, and it's just not gonna work. I've done quite a bit of reading on the internet. You can learn all kinds of things on the internet. Done quite a bit of reading with people that are restoring these cars, and this is kind of a normal process, typically like a body shop would do. So I've got to rework some metal here to make my next steps on the car easier and more efficient. Time to get to work. See you guys back in a little bit. All right, well, that was 2.5 hours of work, in case you were wondering. And you can see we got a lot nicer fit for our trim ring. It's got just a little bit of a, maybe an 1/8 inch of the face now, instead of it having a, you know, probably 3/8 of an inch over here, and then it tapered down. I used silicon bronze for the filler material. It's kind of more like a brazing rod, which you can use on stuff like this, and it'll be like lower heat. so it doesn't just warp everything all kinds of out of whack. So as you may have thought of, everywhere on the back side of where I was welding or brazing there, all that paint and epoxy primer or whatever they ship these things in is all burned off. So once we get this thing back after LS Fest, take the front end off, we'll wire brush the back side of that, put some good epoxy primer on it, probably just rattle can some kind of, you know, semi-gloss black or something on the inside of the fender, so all that work that I did doesn't start rusting through from the back side. So now I've got to fit the other side and then mount the grill. And then I'll be able to tell just what I can cut on the bottom to then fit the radiator. Lots of backwards, forwards. It's tedious, this kind of stuff. And like I said, like, so this corner here, this arch, matches the stock hood. It doesn't match the fiberglass hood perfectly, but it's pretty much expecting that, especially with, and I've got to trim 3/4 of an inch off of both sides of the headlight holes, or the notches for the headlight areas on the hood. That just seems like a lot. But it didn't surprise me that once I had a little manila envelope that I cut to match the contour of the hood. The stock hood matches the fender now, but now the fiberglass bumper almost needs a little bit more curve in it, which is fiberglass, so we'll just reshape it. I've got to add some fiberglass to the back of those corners anyway to reinforce where we're cutting out that edge. That's just how this stuff goes. So I'm gonna get back to work on this side. I'm not gonna film that side. You guys saw me do all the work there. So get that done. Gotta go get my kids. And then I'll come back probably for an hour or two and see just what else I can get done here and catch you back up in just a minute. Alrighty, well, you can see after I got my corners fixed, got this one fixed too. Not 100%, I will admit. You can still see a little bit of the corner of the fender there, but it's also hanging off down here, so the only way to completely get rid of that is a whole lot of chopping and sectioning. And so for a race car, street car, I think that's plenty good. Before, the way it was going up like this, it was just causing all kinds of weirdness with things. But I still have to remake this bracket here because it's rusted out and somebody just booger welded a nut onto it so that it doesn't really line up with the hole and it's crooked at an angle. And I believe what we're going to do is pop some Zeus fasteners on this front edge. We'll use some black hex Zeus's just like the ones we used on Mullet. But the moment of truth, so all of this assembly was so that I could see just how much I could cut right here, which by the looks of it, I can gain another 3/4 of an inch without even notching the radiator itself. And that is a good thing. So I'm gonna go grab the radiator. Let's see if this camera will balance up here. Probably won't. Be right back. By the looks of that, I am going to need every bit of that 3/4 of an inch. So you can see we're pretty close there, and the fan sticks out beyond the shroud. I think it's about 3/4 of an inch. So we've got about a 1/2 inch there, maybe 3/8 on this side. But it's also in here a little crooked. Ooh, yeah, it's hard to do this with one hand. Run the camera with one hand and the video with the other hand. Don't scratch the pipe. Yeah, I think I might even pull into the grill just a little bit to get I think I'm going to notch into the grill just a fuzz. Maybe just where the tanks are at, so that I can pull radiator forward like an inch. And what I'm going to do is I will weld a small piece of tube to the bottom of this piece here, and that'll give it the support so that it won't be all bendy and all that good stuff. But starting to show like we're going to be able to make this work. I got to chop this off because Sean wants to do an expansion tank, which should be really good for keeping all the air blood out of the system, as well as it gives us an extra gallon or so of capacity. And the longer the water can spend in the radiator getting cooled off, and the more capacity you have, the longer it takes to warm up, but also the longer it takes to cool down. So for example, like the Lawn Dart and Soccer Mom, pretty small radiators, especially the Lawn Dart. The Lawn Dart is literally, if they pull it back from the top end, it's literally 100 degrees by the time they get back to the pits. And even if they drive it back, the fan works well enough that it cools down to like 150, 160, where it might be 170, 180 at the finish line. That's getting pretty exciting on all this. I'll wrap this up Monday, and the goal here, or what is going to happen, it's not a goal, it's what's going to happen. We're going to make the front end where it's removable and the radiator will stay in the car. Makes it easier for working on things, taking the engine out. You can just, you know, we'll have 1, 2, 3, 4, so 8 bolts on the back fenders, and then we'll work out some kind of arrangement up here in the front where there'll be 2 or 4 bolts at the front of the front end where it's going to bolt to the frame that's already there. Pop those out, off comes the front end for easier working on, yeah, race car stuff in a street car. So that's going to wrap up this video. Appreciate everybody watching and subscribing. We'll have some more videos on that sometime next week. I'm going to get myself home, eat me some dinner, go to bed, catch a shower because I feel like I just jumped out of a swimming pool. I'm saving my pennies for the AC. Saving. Anyways, we'll see you guys next time.